Hello and welcome back to Coach Bill's Sports Show. As always, I'm Coach Bill. Today we're going to be huddling up and we'll be getting into the weekend ahead for college football. So these are just some of the games this weekend that hold some significance of some kind. Hopefully learning something about at least one of the teams, if not both teams in the contest. Just looking ahead at some of the interesting games and interesting matchups this weekend. So from the early slate, we're going to start with Michigan versus Indiana. This is really Michigan's first test of the season. And it's the beginning of a stretch of games for Michigan where we're going to kind of learn what they're about as a team. This is also a little bit of a trap game because next up ahead is Penn State. So does Michigan get caught looking ahead? Do they show the talent that has made them, I think they're sitting at the number 5 in the AP poll right now. It's a big matchup looming on the horizon with Penn State. Do they get caught looking past Indiana? Indiana, they're not the best team in the world. Never will say they are. But they aren't the worst team in college football. So, any given Saturday, if you're not playing the team that's on the field with you, you can get got. Next game up, personal for me. It's the Tennessee at LSU game. So historically speaking, Tennessee versus LSU has always been a wild game when it's in Baton Rouge or Death Valley. We'll go with Death Valley. Not 100% where the stadium is, but we'll go with Death Valley. This also is the start of a stretch for Tennessee where 4 of the next 5 games are ranked. They go at LSU. They have Alabama, UT Martin, the only unranked team. Then they have Alabama at home, then UT Martin at home, Kentucky at home, and then they go to Georgia. This is the stretch of the season that, before the season, I was the most worried about. But Tennessee has been impressive so far. I do think they go into this game against LSU without their number 1 wide receiver, Tillman. I think they're holding Tillman out for another week until the Alabama game, just to be sure that he's at 100% and ready to go. But that's not to say they are overlooking LSU. LSU is not one of those teams you overlook. You don't really overlook any SEC team. Missouri showed that to Georgia this past week. And like I said, the long history of Tennessee visiting Death Valley, it's been an issue. It's been wild and crazy games. They give Tennessee fits. And with Alabama looming in Knoxville the following week, it's another one where do they get caught looking ahead? But it's a big road matchup for them, ranked team. Brian Kelly's got some talent down there. He's been making some interesting decisions. They definitely can't start off as slow as they did against Auburn last week. Auburn only put 17 in the first half. If you start that slow against Tennessee, they're going to hang probably 30 on you. I think this game, Tennessee's favorite, and I think it's by 3 or 4. I actually have them winning by a touchdown. But it's a lot closer of a game than I would hope for. I do know that ESPN's FBI has LSU as the favorite, and I don't know about that. I've been watching these teams preparing for this game, and I think it's going to come down to turnovers. And to me, while yes, Tennessee's defense is not the best in the nation, LSU's offense isn't either. And if you press an offense to try to score with Tennessee, it can create big plays. Couple big plays go Tennessee's way, they can march out there pretty easily. If a couple big plays go against Tennessee, it's going to be a dogfight. Speaking of a dogfight, a game that I never had on my radar to start the season, I very well doubt that anybody had this game on their radar. We have TCU at Kansas. This is where College Game Day is going to be. If anybody could have called a ranked-on-ranked matchup in Lawrence, Kansas, with a undefeated 4-0 Kansas, who before the season even started, their win total was set at 3. Let's just remember that. Their win total was set at 3. They are 4-0. And they're playing host to an undefeated 4-0 TCU team off a huge win for their program against Oklahoma. So this is it's a big game. Can TCU get up twice in a row? Playing Oklahoma last week and then having to get up to play Kansas this week in a ranked road matchup. What's going to be this game for me will show a lot about both teams and will firmly plant the winner into the Big 12 conversation with Baylor and Oklahoma State. I don't know if it's Kansas. I don't know if it's TCU. I haven't been able to watch them enough. Whoever it is who wins this game, I think goes into the top 3 for the Big 12, and we have to start looking ahead to kind of figure out, okay, who's got who, when, and where, to kind of see how the Big 12 is going to shake out. Speaking of Big 12, the matchup that we all thought was going to be the big matchup in the Big 12 this weekend, the Red River rivalry, Texas versus Oklahoma. This is one of those games where, as cliche as it sounds, you throw the records out when you play this game. Quinn Ewers is coming back and is starting for the Texans, which is a big boost for that team and that offense. Oklahoma has been kind of spiraling as well, so this could go really bad really quick for Brett Venables and Oklahoma, especially with them missing their number one quarterback. This is a very, very rough matchup to come at this time of the year after what's happened for Oklahoma. For Texas, this is kind of a bounce-back game. The key stat for me when looking at this game, though, is Oklahoma is 111th in the nation as a run defense. That's right, they are triple digits as a run defense. And they're going against a guy who a lot of people have as a late first rounder, early second rounder at running back in Bijan Robinson. And I tell you what, if they can't fix that run defense, it's going to be a long, long day for Oklahoma. And if they sell out to beat that run, and Ewers can look anywhere like he looked against Alabama before he got hurt, it's going to be a long one for Oklahoma. But Red River rivalry is always a wonderful game. Hopefully one day we'll be able to get out there and see it. It's definitely one of my bucket list games. That's it for the early slate. So for the midday games, that's that 3:30, 4:30 kickoff kind of games. There's 3 that kind of stood out for me. First one up comes out of the big Pac-12. Utah versus UCLA. This one is honestly one of the biggest games for the weekend. It has national championship implications with it, which is why I say it's one of the biggest games for the weekend. The winner of this game sets up a matchup with USC later on in the season that, for all intents and purposes, could be a de facto Pac-12 championship game. UCLA has been dominant, absolutely dominant against their opponents this season. But this is the first true test for them. And Utah, who got written out after their loss to Florida, this is their way of showing they've regrouped. They've battled back over the past stretch of 3 games where they've been 142-27. Whew. That's a team that found out some stuff about themselves late at Florida and has been kind of on a roll. While it hasn't been against ranked or conference opponents, it's still an impressive role to be on. So like I said, this sets up whoever wins this game. Their matchup with USC later in the season becomes essentially a de facto Pac-12 championship game. Yes, I know they have a Pac-12 championship, but Utah, UCLA, and USC are all on the same side of the conference. And with those being the top 3 dogs in the conference, you can see where this kind of goes. Talking about top dogs, Ohio State versus Michigan State. This is the start of a 3-game stretch for Ohio State that will show us a little better where they stand compared to past Ohio State teams, because we already know Ohio State is one of those teams this season. This trip to Michigan State, which I know a lot of people are overlooking, Michigan State always plays stuff at home. They always find one miracle a year where they beat somebody at home they shouldn't have beat. Ohio State needs to be wary of that. They go back home and they get Iowa, which, how do I say this nicely? Iowa's defense is good. They have a great defense, but their offense is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. It's bad. It's very bad in Iowa for offensive purposes. And then at the end of the 3-game stretch, they go on a trip to Happy Valley, and they get Penn State at the end of October. So weathering the storm isn't just enough for Ohio State. They need to dominate Michigan State. They need to dominate Iowa to go into that potential top 10 matchup at Penn State and allow it to kind of springboard them. Now, CJ Stroud at the helm with arguably one of the most talented rosters in college football. The depth they have at running back and wide receiver is just phenomenal. The talent there alone should carry them fairly far, but I want to see them actually dominate teams. And if they start steamrolling, they have 2 more major matchups for this year. They've got the trip to Penn State, and then they have their rival Michigan. I fully believe Ohio State finishes the season undefeated, but we're going to learn a lot on how dominant they can be over the next few games. Last one up for the midday slate is Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is my current pick for the Big 12 championship team. Texas Tech has shown some solid games this season, even though the record, which is 3-2, doesn't really show it as much. They played a really tight game against NC State. They beat a then-ranked Houston. They beat Texas. So there's some fight in this Texas Tech team. And for Oklahoma State, after a big win against Baylor, and with a road trip to currently undefeated TCU following this game, do they slip up against Texas Tech? I guess that's for the early games at least, that is the theme of the day, is avoiding the slip up, avoiding the trap game, avoiding looking ahead. Oklahoma State has the chance to do something very special, and while they're currently on the outside looking in at the playoff picture, with Ohio State having to play, Ohio State still has to play Michigan, with the chance of Georgia and Alabama meeting in the SEC championship game, there's a possibility, there's a route for them to climb into the college football playoff. And they have to continue to succeed, they have to be dominant, and they have to keep winning. They could sneak in and get a 3 or a 4 seed if they continue to keep this push going forward. But if they let the sneakiness pop up, that's all she wrote, folks. Speaking of sneakiness, let's get into the late games. There is a team that I think once they took a loss to Oregon, people just kind of like, yeah, they are over there. But that's BYU. BYU goes to Notre Dame this week. And Notre Dame is nowhere near where we thought they were at the beginning of the season. BYU is a better team than we thought they were at the beginning of the season. And Jaron Hall and the Cougars have some stuff to prove. With a road loss to Oregon, they want to show they can go on the road and beat a big-name team. Notre Dame has shown us they could play Ohio State tight and then turn around and lose to Marshall. So we don't know who we're going to get from Notre Dame any given week. Do I think either one of those is the actual Notre Dame team? No, I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think both of those outcomes were extremes for them. My concern is somewhere in the middle of those two outcomes isn't enough to convince me that they will beat BYU. BYU and Jaron Hall make this game a statement for them for the rest of the season. And they know the spotlight's there. They know it's a late game. I just think BYU comes out and shows like, hey, I know y'all forgot about us, but y'all shouldn't have. Another team that wish they could be forgotten about right now, but are about to go into a lion's den, is Texas A&M at Alabama. This is the game that everybody circled on their calendars when Jimbo and Nick Saban had issues during the offseason. Alabama's been waiting for this game. I can tell you right now, Alabama's been waiting for Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M Aggies to come into town. Saban is not a nice man when he's pushed into a corner. He's not the type to call off the dogs, and he got called out. He got publicly berated and made to look a little bad this offseason. And that all came at the hands of Jimbo Fisher. Plus, they lost to this team last year, so Nick Saban's going to have his boys ready. The chance is there that Bryce Young doesn't play in this game. But to me, it doesn't even matter. It's a small silver lining for a team from Texas A&M. To me, though, with how weak, and I mean weak, Texas A&M's defense has been against the run, I would let Bryce Young sit. I'd put in that freshman quarterback, and I'd run an RPO with a slant on the strong side, on the field side, every freaking play until they broke it up. Because Gibbs can run and run people over. that quarterback can run and run people over. And they have fast and dynamic wide receivers that can break big plays. Stop me is exactly what I would tell Jim. I'd give him the playbook. Here's the RPOs. Stop us. So I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can do it. They're going to make the defense make a choice, and whatever choice they make is going to be wrong. On a little bit more of a interesting side, there's no real implications for this game for either team, but this is more of a, I want to see how these teams react. It's Florida State and NC State. This game is a bounce-back game for both teams who lost last week. NC State got essentially dominated by Clemson. They scored late to make it look good, but they essentially got dominated by Clemson. And Florida State lost in a heartbreaker against Wake Forest. Clemson and Wake Forest are both really good teams. They're both teams that I have a lot of faith in. So I want to see how these two teams react to losing to those teams. This game, to me, if it was on a neutral field, would be a pick'em game. It's at NC State. It's a late game. It's going to be under the lights. But to me, this is essentially a coin toss. I don't like looking at the Vegas line and thinking, man, I don't know about that. But I got that feeling with this game. They have NC State winning this game, and I just don't know if that happens. I think Florida has been more battle tested. I think Florida State, has been more battle tested, and I think they've shown more consistency on offense as a team. The issue is that their defense has allowed more points against them than NC State has. But to their credit, they faced better competition. Florida State's only faced one team that is not a Power 5 team, where NC State has faced 2.5. I say 2.5 because I think East Carolina, their first game of the season, is probably going to be one of those next teams pulled up in the expansion race. But I think NC State really showed a lot of flaws in the Clemson game, and I think Florida has the talent to take advantage of it. The question will become, will they take advantage of it, and can they take advantage of it? Does that offensive scheme work well enough to make it happen? So there's a lot of questions wrapped up in that game, and I think I'm going to learn a lot about both those teams and the ACC itself as a whole off of this game. So it's very interesting to me, and more of the die-hard college football fan than it is to the average public. But those are some of the games this weekend that I'm looking forward to. I'm excited about. I'm really, really excited for this late game stretch, especially watching Alabama just absolutely destroy Texas A&M. If I had the money, I'd be putting everything down on Alabama to cover that spread. It's a big spread right now, and I understand that, but I think Alabama is not going to call off the dogs. I think they're going to run the score up on them, and I think Nick Saban's going to let Will Anderson and that defense just loose. It's going to be a bloodbath in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Tell me what games I missed. Tell me which games you think are on this list that you're excited for. Let's talk about it down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you're a subscriber. If not, please subscribe. It definitely helps us here. We're trying to make this a little bit more of a full-time thing. So every like, comment, subscribe definitely would help. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Ready, break.